The story of Afrikaans heritage, a new South Africa and twin brothers who were torn by their allegiances. Brothers in peace and war shows you the Volun brothers like we've never known them before. Dennis joins us right now. He's in our Cape Town studios. A very, very good morning to you. It's so lovely to have you here on the program.
Good morning, Leanne. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you.
Before we talk about the book, a little trip down memory lane. You were one of the first broadcast journalists brought into the SABC to cover the 1994 elections. I mean, it's a long time ago. I mean, this is 20 years we're talking. What was it like for you?
Leanne, it was a lifetime ago. It was exciting times. You can imagine coming from the print media into the broadcast media and being a novice, really. And learning, but you know, when you're young, you're so arrogant, you think that no one can teach you anything. And I laugh now when I think about the mistakes I've made and probably some of the people I've offended because of the arrogance. So yeah, they were good times, very, very good times.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think every election to cover is a good one, but the 1994 one, that was epic. Let's talk about the book. What made you want to write a book like this?
Leanne, it started by accident. I have a good friend, or my wife and I have a good friend, and she lived out in Pretoria. And when they moved to Cape Town, she told us about, she knew Constand Viljoen very well, and she gave us an insight into the world of the Viljoens. And she thought there was a newspaper article hiding somewhere there, and I said, no, it's a book. Unfortunately, her husband then had cancer. So the idea of a book was put on the back burner, so to speak. And a year or two later, we chatted again, and I said, let's go for it. And there's the book today. There's the book. Almost 3 years later, we have the book.
Yeah. I think we've jumped the gun quite a bit because a lot of people may not know who these Viljoen brothers actually are and what their story is. So in a nutshell, just tell us.
In a nutshell, yes. Set of twins born in the Standerton district. Their father was an Afrikaner, but he supported Jan Smuts. We're going back a little bit into South African history. Jan Smuts was a Boer War hero. He became an enemy to some Afrikaners because he sought peace with the British. He was a hero of the English-speaking section of South Africa, a big part of the English section of South Africa, speaking section of South Africa. He formed the United Party. He was a world player. I suppose people later drew comparisons between him and Thabo Mbeki, the same kind of stature, huge impact on the international front. And then he lost the 1948 election. The National Party came to power. It was during that time that the Viljoen twins grew up. Their family supported Smuts' party, but Constand Viljoen was a staunch supporter of Smuts and his policies. Whereas his brothers called himself the black sheep of the family. Yeah. He had resentment and some might say bitterness against what England had done to the Boers in the Anglo-Boer War. And then they went their separate ways. Constand went into the army, rose through the ranks and became head of the army, and in probably one of the most decorated soldiers in the history of the South African Defence Force. His brother went the other direction, refused to become ordained as a priest in the NG Church, simply because he thought apartheid was unbiblical and he couldn't see himself standing on a pulpit and defending apartheid. So he ended up at UNISA, where he was a lecturer, and then he became involved in the South African Council of Churches. And so you can imagine, the one brother was in the echelons of Afrikaner power. The other brother was on the other side opposing that power. Yeah. Come 1993, we know what happened. We had negotiations, but we had the right-wing snarling and growling in the one corner. And if one looked back in those days, we had conscription. So white men who were eligible were conscripted into the army. So in the ranks of the right wing, you had well-trained and well-armed people, and Constand Viljoen could have called on them if they wanted to go to war. And there was this brinkmanship for a good while where you had threats of we're going to go to war, we're going to turn the country upside down, we will not allow elections to take place. It was a country of threats, I suppose, and lots of violence. And in this time stepped Constand Viljoen, he went to his brother. They were politically estranged, obviously. And he asked him if he could not broker a meeting between him and the ANC. His brother wanted to go back to his people just to get their support, and subsequently came back and said, yes, go ahead. And from there followed a meeting with Nelson Mandela at his Houghton home.
Yeah.
And quite incredibly, there you had the greatest statesman we've had in this country serving tea to General Viljoen and his colleagues and telling him that, you know, we could go to war. You can't wipe out all of us and we can't defeat you. Yeah. Somewhere we've got to find one another. And at that meeting at Mr. Mandela's home, they found one another and the talks developed. And from those talks, we had elections. It wasn't smooth sailing. There was no way in which it was smooth talks. In the end, I think 3 days before the elections, General Viljoen was still wondering whether he should go to war or not.
Yes.
Of course, his war was not going to be a full-scale war. It would have been insurrection, sabotage from someone who had fought and studied communist insurgency. He knew a thing or two about that, and that was what he was going to do. And he would have caused a lot of mayhem. I remember someone once telling me, just take a look at Syria.
Yeah, yeah.
If we had gone the route that General Viljoen had in mind, we would have ended up as Syria.
I'm going to have
God, we did not.
Dennis, I'm going to have to interrupt you there because, I mean, I think I didn't want to interrupt you the entire time because you had me in this story. And I mean, imagine just writing a newspaper article in that. That is not a newspaper article. That is, as you've done, penned it into a book. I have to leave it there, but I think you've answered all my questions by just explaining what the book is about and this rich history that these two identical twin brothers had, Abraham and Constand Viljoen, how they shaped South Africa in their own way, but taking completely different paths. And the author of this book, Dennis Cruywagen, with us. So that's the end of that interview. I have to quickly say we're taking a break because we're going to be a little bit late with